I'm Jim Hummel, and welcome into a new segment we are debuting this week called Reporters Rewind. My colleague Ian Donnis and I take a look back at the top political stories in Rhode Island, offering some background and musings that go beyond the stories that you've seen this past week. So, Ian, welcome.
Good to be with you, Jim.
Always a lot to get into, so let's get right to it. The Superman building we've been talking about a lot over the years. There's some new and unexpected developments this week.
That's right. David Sweetser, owner of the company that owned the Superman building, died last weekend at age 70. That kind of came out of the blue, and the Superman building efforts to redevelop it have kind of been in suspended motion for a long time, since the last Bank of America worker left in 2013. There have been various stops and starts, and a plan was rolled out 3 years ago to try and create 300 apartments at the Superman building. The financing has been tough. The cost of supplies has gone up. The value of downtown properties has gone down. And there was some tweaking to a state tax credit made in the most recent legislative session that was said to be the finishing piece to the financing package. But now, with the death of Sweetser, it's really unclear what that means right now for the future of the Superman building.
Yeah, when you talk to people, there's not a lot of appetite for more help from the government, and he's been the driving force. So we'll have to see. I mean, I guess we just wait for the next couple of months to see.
Yeah, state incentives have obviously gotten a bad reputation since the 38 Studios debacle. The plan, unveiled about 3 years ago, as you know, included about $65 million in state incentives, enough to help but not pay for the whole thing. So it's really a question, where does it go from here now? But let me ask you something, Jim. We saw a somewhat unusual move this week. Rhode Island Energy, the state's top utility, held a news conference to talk about lower winter energy prices. We know that Rhode Islanders pay among the highest electricity prices in the nation. So was this a charm offensive, a necessary correction, a mixture of both?
Well, I think they could use some good publicity. The rates usually go up, and so to be able to say they're going to go down is good news. It was a really bad rollout with that 65,000 customers who were out in the last storm. The outage map went out. So I think it's been a bumpy ride since they took over for National Grid. I mean, National Grid had its own issues, too. And so I think the president getting out there, to his credit, Greg Cornett has been available to almost any reporter who's asked. I've heard him on radio and TV. But this is the first time that I remember they get the podium out and they say, hey, let's talk about rates going down. Of course, it's a little easier doing that than rates going up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember sometime back when electricity was still controlled by National Grid, there seemed to be a very frequent level of power outages where we live in the East Bay, Barrington, East Providence, and it was really frustrating. I know some people have gotten generators because of that. The situation seems to have improved somewhat, and you can't completely get away from power outages due to the unpredictability of weather. But you do have to note, as you did, how Rhode Island Energy is being a little more communicative about its efforts.
Yeah, we like that, right? Communicative. Yeah. If you can actually reach somebody, that's nice.
100%.
All right, there's been an awful lot of action going on behind the scenes with judge vacancies. Now, this is not, a lot of people don't pay attention to this because, who's on the district court, who's on the Superior Court. So they have a judicial nominating commission that takes in all of it. They hold hearings. What's unusual is Mike McCaffrey, the former Senate president, not unusual that he is up for a judgeship.
Majority leader.
I'm sorry, majority leader. He maybe wanted to be president, right? Maybe I gave him a promotion. A whole pile of people came out to speak against him at the hearing. A little unusual.
It was unusual. Usually there's a lot of laudatory comments about judicial nominees. As you say, the JNC, Judicial Nominating Commission, was created back in the 90s with the goal of making the process less political. McCaffrey had left the Senate, deciding not to seek re-election in 2022. It wasn't really clear why.
Did you find that odd at the time?
It did. I mean, there was no real reason on the surface for that. He didn't seem to face a tough re-election fight. But now people who are critical of his politics fear that he could be on the path as a potential district court judge to one day make it to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. They object to his views on same-sex marriage and gay rights, things like that. McCaffrey told Katie Mulvaney from the Pro Show that he's evolved and he's not the same person now that when he espoused those views in the Senate, but we'll see. I mean, as you know, you can't take the politics out of the judicial selection process.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's a lot different. It's like a candidate for president, then you become president and you're the commander in chief. If you're a lawyer and a state rep, it's a lot different than being a judge. And it's a district court judgeship. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much policy would be involved. And I understand why people are upset, but wouldn't you judge him on the merits of his ability as a lawyer and potentially a jurist?
Yeah, and I think that's what his supporters would say. Former legal counsel in the Senate, Nicole Verde, spoke highly of him, as did Alice Gibney, one of the top judges in the state. They praised his temperament, and, you know, they said he does not prejudge an issue before deciding on it, and they said he would be an excellent candidate to be a judge.
You kind of wonder, maybe a little payoff in there at some point? Senate Majority Leader, we always wonder whether promises made ultimately for down the line. We'll never know, probably.
Well, speaking of payoffs, Jim, we know that Governor McKee held some kind of meeting at the AMP this week, possibly in the hopes of luring the Connecticut Sun, a women's basketball team, to Rhode Island. It seems like this is at a very early stage, but do you think this has a real shot of happening?
Well, it's intriguing because it wasn't on his public schedule, and all of a sudden it leaked, and then he didn't want to talk about it, and he confirmed it. The Connecticut Sun, owned by the tribe out at Mohegan Sun, it's a nice arena, but it's not really, you wouldn't go there. It's not on the beaten track. And so women's basketball, the WNBA, has gained tremendously in popularity with players like Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers from UConn. And so now they're thinking about selling it. So does that give them the inroad, maybe to come to Providence, maybe to go to Boston? And what I find interesting is they packed the Boston Garden. They filled it. And the Boston Garden's a third larger than the AMP. But could you sustain a team for that? I mean, was that just a novelty? It looks like what we used to call the Providence Civic Center, then the Dunk, and now the AMP, maybe a little bit better at 13,000. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you see the enthusiasm for college basketball here with PC and some other squads. I was struck by something that Chris Shea reported in the Rhode Island Current. He said the Connecticut Sun franchise is worth $200 million, and the team creates $14 million in revenue a year. That is a lot, and that could be a significant economic boost. I think, you know, since the loss of the Paw Sox, we do have the Rhode Island FC soccer team now. But it does seem like that if that were to come here, the Connecticut Sun, a women's basketball team, it seems like it might be a good fit for Rhode Island.
And the season is good because it's, you know, everything kind of ends in the spring, and they play over the spring and summer. They're done by Labor Day, so that might work.
Yeah.
On a more serious note, horrible fire out in Fall River, Gabriel House. There's been a lot of fallout from that. Manning, questions about smoke alarms, all of that. What's the latest going on out there? And we should know 10 people died in that fire-assisted living center.
Yeah, and more than 30 were injured. A really terribly sad story. This happening at an assisted living facility where a lot of people had limited mobility. There were early indications that the fire was due either to smoking materials or possibly issues with an oxygen machine, which could have accelerated the fire. There's one of the people who was injured who's filed a lawsuit alleging negligence. According to local reports, the assisted living center was up to code. The fire safety system had been inspected recently. So whether that's a legitimate claim really remains to be seen. But anytime you have a tragic fire like this, it should be closely looked at. I mean, we all remember the station fire, and that inspired a very strong response to try and prevent a situation like that from ever happening again.
I thought it was interesting that the fire union, I thought it was a little, maybe the timing wasn't great. The fire union president came out and said, we need more Manning. And I thought, well, can we talk about that tomorrow? We've lost lives. But the mayor the next day put 3 more people on each shift. So maybe that was an issue.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I was reporting for the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, there was a bad fire in Fitchburg, Massachusetts, and firefighters took a ladder truck to the Massachusetts State House in Boston and raised the ladder to dramatize their plight of feeling understaffed. So you do hear these situations, and when there's a loss of life, that has a lot more resonance.
Final issue this week. You and I have each interviewed Speaker Joe Sakarchi over the last month. He's been very coy about maybe if or when he would run for governor. I asked him, and I'll ask you, what do you think the latest is that he can decide? He's got a pile of money. What's the latest that he can decide?
I think, maybe this fall or maybe a little bit later. I mean, Helena Foulkes has mostly been keeping herself under wraps, although we all know she's running. I think Shekarchi would really like to run. He is also a little bit cautious, and he tends to analyze every issue from a variety of angles.
May we say overanalyze?
Well, analysis by paralysis or just being prudent, different people will have different opinions. But he's a very bright guy. He's attracted plaudits from Democrats like Peter Nerona and Republicans like the top House Republican Michael Chippendale. So certainly he's created a different image of the speakership. Whether he runs, that will remain to be seen. I've heard some talk of a possible poll in the field by Helena Foulkes, and it's so early on that it's hard to know how much, if any, value to put into that. But Governor McKee, despite some very low poll ratings, seems stubbornly committed to wanting to seek re-election.
Well, we'll see how that is 6 and 8 months now, and whether labor stays with him and whether the fundraising keeps up. I think that's going to be it.
Yeah, I think one key is labor may well stay with him, but their enthusiasm and the amount of energy they expend on his behalf might be significantly lower than in 2022.
All right, it's a quick segment. Thank you, Ian. Be sure and catch Ian's weekly column, TGIF, at the link listed below, and of course on social media. We hope to see you back here next time.